As promised, joining us now is John Corcoran. John has a deep interest in data and analytics, most particularly in life sciences. The latter has transitioned and expanded into current and ongoing interest in software, web and app development, digital engagement, and AI. In 1996, John formed Trinity Partners, now Trinity Life Sciences. And Trinity has expanded globally with 1,200 employees in the United States, Europe, and India. And John has served as president, CEO of Trinity from its founding until 2018. John was educated at Harvard College and has a master's degree from Northeastern and also from Harvard. And John, and we're proud of this, is chairman of the board of iCatholic Media, of which Catholic TV is a part. John joins us today to discuss his recently published article in the National Catholic Register, Is Mental Health Crisis Hiding in Our Church's Pews? John, great to have you with us.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Could you tell us what inspired this article? Because it's caused a lot of interest and attention.
The original work actually occurred here at Catholic TV. It was market research that was done to understand the interests of the viewers, looking at Catholic media, looking at the consumption of Catholic TV, really answering the question of what kinds of media interest you, making sure that we're aligned with the needs of the audience. The person that did the polling for us is one of our board members, John Della Volpe, who happens to just be one of the leading polling and survey people in the country. He does presidential polling, he does political polling, and in the process of fielding a survey, which was national, with almost 1,600 people in it, and doing focus groups, one of the important things he thought we should add was to find out what people are thinking about in the pews. And that was the genesis of this. That's what came forward in rather dramatic ways. I would say unexpected, certainly, as the chair of the board.
You know, what's interesting to me, John, and I've read, you have a white paper, which is excellent, and I've read the article. Were you surprised by some of the results? Because when you do something like this, there's always something that comes up and that you didn't expect.
The issue that came out in a rather jarring way was about mental health. Would I be surprised that issues around mental health are elevated in the modern society? No. What was jarring was the extent of what came forward. This particular survey was of adult Catholics, but the issue is not just a Catholic issue. There are, depending upon how you count it, 55 or so million adult Catholics in the U.S. This was a survey that is statistically valid. I saw the results the day before one of our board meetings, and I didn't know what to do with it. It was so jarring that I actually embargoed it, if you may recall. Yeah. I said, I have to process this a little bit. And we talk more about that today, but the results, this silent issue that's sitting in the pews are quite dramatic.
So what does this data say to us as Catholics, to me as a bishop, priest? What is the church to do with this data? What's our charge?
Well, let me give you the data, some of the data first. I have my cheat sheet here. So when we talk about mental health, we're not necessarily talking about mental illness. There is sort of a progression. So what I heard in some of the focus groups and read in the research were things like exhaustion, tiredness, struggles to pay bills, those kinds of things. So how does that relate to mental health? Well, somebody could be having a bad day, and they're having a lot of bad days, then they're having a bad month, a bad year, and then they have a bad life. And it opens the door to anxiety, to stress, to depression, those kinds of things which can progress in ways that priests and bishops don't know. So let me give you a few numbers.
Please.
69% said they often feel tired or low energy. 66% struggle with sleep. Over half report feeling down or hopeless in recent weeks. So that's when it progresses into more serious. 41% of people who go to Mass weekly experience depressive symptoms.
That's unbelievable.
And the most alarming of all of them, Bishop, was 1/3 of those surveyed have had thoughts of self-harm or being better off dead at least several days in the past 2 weeks.
1/3?
1/3. You used to hear that term, being better, I'd be better off dead. It was sort of a throwaway line. Now what this is saying is that that's far more present. Now, think about the implications of that as both a priest or bishop, or even as a layperson. If I'm in the pews, What would my reaction be if I found out that 60% of the people around me were dealing with profound economic hardship or illness, chronic or acute illness? Well, what this says is that even if the numbers are a little inflated, as sometimes can happen in surveys, at least half the people around me are on this mental health spectrum, dealing with it. And what's disturbing about it is that it's silent. It obviously doesn't manifest except perhaps in the most acute forms where it's visible.
And you have,
we don't know.
You have this large percentage of people in the pews who are suffering this, but yet there's a stigma, John,
Yes.
about mental health. And people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to admit they have it. And so it gets just thrown under the carpet. So how can we as a church, what do we do to address this?
I think the answer is in the survey, in the survey results. The most important finding that came forward, because you're right, it is silent. There's an element of shame and stigma that's attached to it. Of the respondents, 75% want church leaders to speak more openly about real-life struggles. I'm not a mental health professional, and I'm a layperson. But I think to the extent that as this information goes forward and priests and bishops talk more about it, is that they have to find a way during Mass, most particularly in the homily, it would appear, to bring forward, to link it to the real life struggles that this survey says are present silently. You have to address what's latently there. That, I think, is the answer. That's the only answer.
Yeah.
So why is it important for us as priests, bishops, as lay people, parish councils to be discussing this issue?
Because it's far more present than you think it is. And this is one of those situations where just having a brochure at the entrance to the church, a poster on the bulletin board isn't going to cut it. The problem is quite large, and it's not being addressed. I should point out, too, and you'll be pleased to hear this, that religious affiliation is still viewed as highly important among those surveyed. So the fact that this is going on has not caused people to leave the church. I would argue that it's causing people to reach more forward to it. So that presents the opportunity. And I'm not trying to hand this off completely to priests and bishops saying it's your responsibility, but I think they're looking for the spiritual guidance that will come.
What's the reaction been to the article?
Oh, as we've discussed, Jay, I've been getting lots of emails and calls from bishops who picked it up. Some I don't even know, and increasingly, this is particularly interesting, from mental health professionals, people who read the article. I don't even know if they're Catholic. Said we need to talk more about this. There has to be a more formal response to it. That's the part that's to come. I think for me, the issue was strong enough that I had to bring it forward, that it needed to be revealed so that we can talk about it like we're doing here today. And I'm grateful that we have this opportunity.
So what are the next steps to help pastors be attentive to their people and their emotional and mental needs?
I'm hopeful that here in the Archdiocese of Boston, but in other dioceses, that we can start to talk to priests to validate what I'm saying and to see what their thoughts and reactions are. I don't have the answer. This is the kind of research that brings forward the issue. And it seemed enough for me to say, I can't go completely around the bases here and say problem solution. I'm going to bring it to the point where, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Are you seeing it? Are you feeling it? And so I think the dialogue around it, this cannot be an issue that's swept under the rug. Yeah. It's too present.
Well, John, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
We'll have to have a follow-up on this.
Yes, I have another article
absolutely.
coming on it, sure.
And for you at home, you know, we see this in the mail all the time from so many of you. You feel alone, you can be depressed, and know that there are a number of answers at the church because you are loved and you are cared for. And we understand that you're facing these issues, but you're not facing them alone. We're with you.